I'm here with Joel Dudley, one of the speakers at Big Data. I'm going to start with asking a very basic question. What is big data?
Yeah, so big data is means a lot of things, and I think a lot of people here defined it more technically about volume, velocity, and things like that. But I would define it almost a bit more philosophically in that it's what it sort of captures is just data that we've had around, data that has a lot of untapped potential. There's a quote that's on the banners around here that data is frozen knowledge, right? And so data doesn't have to be so big, that you need supercomputers, but it could be, and the clinical data sets are not often very large, but no one's looking at it, right? So it's all this untapped value. So I would also bucket big data into these smaller data sets, if that makes any sense, because it's the big data mindset, the big data tools, the big data approaches that are going to instigate us to go back and look at these even smaller data sets in a new way to get new insights.
You had said that you might recommend putting probiotics in the hamburgers. Can you explain what you meant by that?
Yeah, so I was being sort of intentionally, controversial there, but one thing that we know about medical compliance. So, if we could solve compliance in terms of patients, they know they're not supposed to smoke, they know they need to exercise, they know they're supposed to take their medication, but they just don't, right? So instead of doing all these genetic association studies on diseases, maybe the first genetic association study we should have done was on compliance. Why do people not follow medical advice? So there's definitely a group of motivated patients, that are going to, look at data and maybe quit smoking or exercise more, but I think, that's not representative of the broad population. So people are just going to continue to do things that are bad for them. And one way to really shift the healthcare curve, I really believe, is to replace some of these bad habits and with things that are a little bit healthier, right? So I like a juicy hamburger with a lot of cheese, but we do know from research that there are microbes you can put in your gut that will totally change your fat metabolism. So someone could eat fat cheeseburgers and stay skinny. Is there anything? Some people might have a philosophical problem with that or an ethical problem with that, but I think, as long as people are getting healthier, this is the way we can use information and technology.
So if we did use data to find, for example, a gene for self-control,
yes.
How could we be able to change behavior even if we knew something like that?
Yeah, so again, kind of somewhat of a joke there. But, so I think, what psychological research and economic research has shown is it's just very, very hard to change people's habits. You can never really get people to change habits. You can get them to only replace them with other habits. So it's, so that people will have these tendencies like what Nigam Shah mentioned. People will play Candy Crush or whatever for hours on end. So that's a compulsion and a need that is being met by that game. So what Nigam was sort of pointing out, can we use data, can we use information to sort of figure out what is that thing that drives people to play Candy Crush for hours on end? How do we tap into that for allowing people to have healthier lifestyles?
That would be great. A Candy Crush motivator.
Yeah.
I think I would play it.
Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for speaking with me.
Thanks a lot.
This is Behind the Scenes at Big Data.